welcome to another Lawn Fawn video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new Crazy Antics stamp set. This is a picnic themed stamp set with some cute little mice on a picnic, some ants, and some fun goodies to set the picnic scene. There's also some punny ant sentiments to go along with the fun images. The first card today is a remake of a card by Rebecca, and I'm using this slide on over maize die. I'm cutting it from a white stitched panel, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment around this maze. So I've put it in my MISTI here, and I'm just going to line up those stamps and stamp them kind of in the voids between the pathways. This fun maze die is perfect to pair with this fun new Crazy Antics set. We're not making a slider card today, but how fun would it be if those little ants moved around the little pathways? We're going to see some other examples by the design team later where that happens. So I've put the solid picnic stamp in, and I'm stamping it down with some merman ink. And then I'm going to add the rest of my sentiment pieces and pick those up with the door of my MISTI. I'm going to stamp those down in black, but I'm also going to stamp the outline for the word picnic as well. So I've just lined that up, and I'm going to pick that up with the door of my MISTI, and this way I know that my placement's going to be perfect. I'm going to be stamping these in some black ink. And I just love how this sentiment is kind of tucked into all the little places around this maze. Now I can put the background panel that I've cut. Now this is cut from some striped pattern paper from the Hello Sunshine collection, and this is what we're going to see through the maze. It's also going to create a border around our maze because the panel that the maze is cut from is slightly smaller than the card base. So I've covered the back with a bunch of foam tape so that it can be popped up from that card base and have some dimension off of that pattern paper. And I'm just going to center it up and stick that right to the background. And I just love the border that this creates, and I also love seeing those rainbow stripes through that maze die. I just think it has a really cool look. In addition to Crazy Antics, I'm going to use some clouds from the new All the Clouds stamp set to help set my little scenes around this maze. So I've got the picnic blanket there, and I'm just going to add some of these little clouds. And then now I'm going to put the little mice having the picnic on that blanket. And I love all these little goodies that you can have them hold, like the popsicle here. I also really love this slice of watermelon. I think that would be super fun to make a background with that watermelon. I like the slice of cheese. I just think that's perfect, especially for the mice. And I love how in Rebecca's design, it looks like these little ants are stealing all the food. The sandwich I'm going to put on a foam square in that maze. So because I've popped that maze up, I use the foam square to attach that sandwich right on the line, whereas everything else is kind of on the white card base. And then you can tuck some of these foods into the basket, which I think is super cute. And then I'm going to add some foam squares to my basket to pop it up a little bit. Everything else to this point I've just glued directly to the card base, so this gives a little dimension to that picnic basket. And then finally, I'm going to add those little tiny ants. So there's two sizes of ants in this set, and those little tiny ants just kind of finish it off. And then here is that finished card designed by Rebecca. For my next card, I'm going to be using the Gingham Backdrop stamps. I thought that this went really well with the picnic theme of the Crazy Antics stamp set, looking like a tablecloth or the picnic blanket. I've got a mermaid card base here, and I'm going to be stamping the larger of the two gingham patterns with some mermaid ink for a cool tone-on-tone look. I'm using my MISTI stamping tool so that I make sure that I have it lined up nice and evenly. You can take your cardstock and shift it up 3/4 of an inch if you want, but I seem to never get things lined up quite well when I do that. So I'm just going to pull my stamp off every time and reline it up and pick it up with a door. And that way I know that it's lined up perfectly to make this gingham across the background. I'm going to stamp this 4 times. I'm not going to do the entire background because I'm going to be covering up the left side of this card with a piece of cardstock on the front. So I just want to stamp it enough times to fill it in as I need it. I have a piece of fog cardstock here, and I'm just going to draw a diagonal line as a guide on where to cut it. So this is going to be a panel that goes diagonally across the front. I'm just going to use my paper trimmer and line it up with that pencil line to cut that diagonal. So you can see how that panel is going to cover up the left side of my card base. But before I adhere that down, I'm going to do some stamping on this panel, and I'm using some Distress Oxide ink in pumice stone, and I've put 5 of those little ants all on one block, and I'm just stamping them around and turning them to make a tone-on-tone custom pattern paper for this left side of the card. So now that I have that panel all stamped with the ants, I'm going to add the sentiment. So I'm just going to use my MISTI stamping tool again. I'm going to line up all the pieces of this sentiment. This is going to say, "We go together like picnics and ants." So I'm just kind of varying them around. I'm not lining them up perfectly as far as the edges go. And I just think this is going to have a really cool look to go along with that diagonal line that we've created across the front. So this stamp actually just says picnic. The S is separate so that you have a choice of whether you want it to say picnic or picnics. So I'm actually going to stamp it without the S first, and then I will add that here in just a minute. So I'm going to stamp this part, and then to make sure that I have the S spaced correctly, I just stamped that separately. I'm also going to stamp around those teeny tiny ants just sort of as embellishments around the sentiment. So there's 2 little teeny tiny ants that like to stick to my fingers. And then there's a little trail, so I'm just going to add that along the bottom. So I'm adding these to my sentiment as well. I just think that's kind of a fun composition with the little ants and the variety of fonts. And then I'm going to take my red Copic marker and I'm just going to color in those letters. I'm actually going to go in with a darker red and color the bottom of the letters to give it sort of a very subtle ombre shadow. But this is just another option on what to do with these open letters if you don't want to stamp the solid one like I did in the first card. Now to mount that panel onto the card base, I've added some foam all along the back of it, and I'm just going to put that on the left side and line it up with the top and the bottom and the left side of the card base. And I just think this has a fun, unique look with that gingham sort of sliding behind this stamped panel. Now I can add the images that I've colored and cut out with the coordinating dies. I'm putting my little picnic blanket down and my 2 little mice. And for this picnic, they're going to be sharing this slice of watermelon, which I think goes with the colors of this card so well. Now I can add my picnic basket to the left side. I'm popping that up with some foam, and then I can add all these little goodies to the inside of the basket. So I've got a sandwich and a slice of cheese because they're mice. They can't go on a picnic without some cheese. And then the fun bag of chips I'm going to layer on the front side of that basket. And then finally the tiny little ants that are coming to join them for the picnic. And then here's a look at that finished card. I just love that tone-on-tone stamping and that gingham in the background. Now let's take a look at some examples from the design team. I love the slimline card that Tammy created. She created a fun scene and she used Oliver's ABCs to really make a bold sentiment. Elise used some speech bubble stamps for her sentiments, and I love that line of tiny little ants headed for that picnic basket. Audrey used the larger blanket that's part of this set to completely stretch across her card, and I love that cloudy sky that she created using the stencils. Megan's pop-up box card is super cute, and I love that she used the mice from You're Just My Type. That one peeking out of the picnic basket is just too cute. And Elise used the maze die to create some pathways in the dirt for the little ants to go through. I love how Grace paired the gingham paper with this set to create a fun center picture window card with a punny anniversary sentiment on the front and those cute little mice in the center. Letitia created a simple card with a fun cloudy stenciled background, and I just love those little mice having a picnic up in the clouds. Elena changed it up a little bit, creating a scene with just an ants-only picnic, so no mice allowed. And then Megan created this fun slimline card with a starry nighttime scene at the top. And then you can see how she cut the pathways using different slider dies for the ants down in the ground in the bottom. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.